Today, we're going to do something pretty cool. We're going to take what looks like a really complicated, kind of dry document, a family genealogy, and unlock an absolutely incredible story. It's a story that stretches from colonial New Mexico all the way to modern California. And it's got everything: power, servitude, and secrets that have been hiding in the margins of history for centuries. So let's dive in.
You could ask this about any family, right? But the Chavez lineage, wow, it gives us such a powerful answer. By following the threads of this one family, we're going to see how a single family tree can actually contain the sprawling, complex, and fascinating history of the entire American Southwest.
And believe it or not, our whole investigation starts right here, with this one document. I know, at first glance, it's just a dense wall of text. Its names, its dates, a few footnotes. It looks almost impossible to get through. But buried in these pages is a remarkable story, and together, we're about to pull it out.
All right, so where do we even begin with something like this? Well, every family story has a starting point. For us, it's a man named Bonifacio Armando Domingo Chavez, born back in 1940. From there, the document lets us easily trace his story backward. We see his parents, Manuel and Maria Luisa, and then we go back one more generation to his dad's parents, Bonifacio and Candida. Simple enough. These are the first branches of our story.
But right away, the document starts to paint a much bigger picture. A classic American story, really. Just by tracking where people were born and where they died, we can see this huge 20th century migration. Manuel was born in New Mexico, a place where his family had roots going back for centuries. But look, by the time he, his wife, and his own mother pass away, they're all in Los Angeles. This is a huge pivot for the family, moving from their ancestral homeland to build a new life in California.
Okay, but let's go deeper. We're going back to the grandfather, also named Bonifacio Chavez, the one born in 1866. Now, on the surface, he's just another name, another date in the tree. But the document has this tiny little note about him, a footnote that, it turns out, changes absolutely everything we think we know about this family.
And here it is. The record states, plain as day, that Bonifacio Chavez was the natural child of Francisca, the Indian servant of Bartolo Chavez. Another note even clarifies that her kids were with Bartolo himself and then raised by his wife. Wow, this single sentence just blows the family history wide open and introduces a whole new, really complicated layer to their heritage.
So you see this phrase, Indian servant, and you have to wonder, what did that actually mean at that time and in that place? Well, history gives us a specific term for this: Geneaology. This was a whole social class in colonial New Mexico. It was often made up of Native Americans who were no longer with their original tribes. Many of them had been captured, and they were then brought into Hispano society. They lived in this really complex in-between space, blending indigenous and Spanish cultures. Francisca's story, it fits right into this pivotal and often overlooked piece of the region's history.
But here is where the story takes a wild turn. Just as we're wrapping our heads around this story of servitude, the family tree reveals something completely different, something that feels almost impossible. Because woven into these very same family lines is a direct connection to not one, but two governors of colonial New Mexico.
I mean, the contrast here is just staggering. Think about it. On one side, you have a direct ancestor, Bartolomeo Baca. He was the governor of New Mexico, a powerful landowner who had his own private fort and, at one point, around 300 servants. And on the other, a relative through marriage, Francisco Javier Chavez, who was governor right before him. This just shows you the two poles of this family's history, from the absolute highest levels of colonial power to the world of indigenous servitude, all happening within a few generations.
So the big question is, how? How can these two completely opposite stories exist in one family line? Well, the answer lies in a really tightly woven social fabric. For centuries, a handful of these major colonial families in New Mexico, the Chavez, Baca, Luna, Castillo, and Garibaldi families, they all constantly intermarried. It created this dense web of relationships where pretty much everybody was related to everybody else. It's because of this interconnectedness that you can have these dramatic, conflicting histories all existing inside a single family tree.
So let's just step back and look at what we found. We started with what looked like a boring document, and we've pulled out this much bigger, incredible story. We've seen how one family can hold the absolute extremes of a society, from servitude to governorship. We've traced a massive migration that reshaped who they were. And we found the most important clue of all, hidden in a simple footnote. It really just proves that personal history is never just personal. It's a window into the entire history of a place and its people.
And this all leads to a final question, the Chavez family story. It was there the whole time, just waiting in a document to be pieced together. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What incredible stories of power, of migration, of hidden heritage are waiting to be discovered in yours?